Welcome to the Fibromyalgia Podcast. I'm Tami, fibromyalgia coach, author, and founder of the International Fibromyalgia Coaching Institute. The goal of this podcast is to empower you with access to the dream team of experts and coaches I've discovered are key to living the fibro life you love. From the comfort of your own home, and maybe even your pajamas, I'll help you take back control of your life and health. To help out with fibro fog, I always include full show notes and additional resources at fibromyalgiapodcast.com. Welcome to the Fibromyalgia Podcast. I'm your coach, Tami, and this is episode 163. Today, I want to share with you a question that came up in our Certified Fibromyalgia Coach training class just this last week. One of my students asked, if you had to name the top 3 reasons why people do not improve, what would you say those would be? And I thought that was a fabulous question for my students to be thinking about, okay, if I have a client that's not improving, why could that be? And I thought you might want to hear my answer to that as well. So that is today's episode. These are the top 3 hidden reasons why your fibromyalgia symptoms are not improving. And I say hidden symptoms because there's a lot of things that we're aware of that might be reasons why we're not improving, like maybe we have a doctor that doesn't know what to do with us. These reasons are a little bit more sneaky, the ones we're going to talk about today. Some of them are things you can do something about yourself. You can change yourself. Some of them are going to need a little bit of help. So let's dive in. What are the top 3 hidden reasons that I have seen over the last 16 years with my clients for why people's fibromyalgia symptoms don't improve? The number 1 reason is because they're not listening to their bodies. Now, you and your body might have had a divorce. You might not be listening to your body. And sometimes that really does happen with fibromyalgia because we kind of check out from the neck down, right? We are in so much pain. We have so much fatigue that we almost have to check out in order to survive, in order to get through the day. But at a certain point, we have to start checking back in and we have to start listening to what our bodies are telling us, or we are not going to be able to improve. So what does this look like? I'm going to group these 2 types of not listening into 2 categories. First is conscious, and the second is unconscious. So conscious ways that we are not listening to our bodies, for one thing, might just be a season of life. So maybe you have fibromyalgia and maybe you've got 3 kids under the age of 5 at home. You might not be able to listen to all the signals your body is giving you about it being time to sit down and rest and not push yourself so hard because you got to do what you got to do. So this is an example of a conscious way that we are saying, I hear you, body, but can't do that right now. We also might be in active denial. We might know that we can't and maybe shouldn't do some of these things, and we're still choosing to do it anyway because we are actively in denial about what having fibromyalgia means, about the fact that we might not be as young as we used to be, and we might not be able to do the things that we used to be able to do. So those are some examples of conscious ways that we're not listening to our bodies, and those will absolutely hold you back. Now, if it's a season of life, if there's reasons that you're in denial and you're choosing not to listen to your body, that's okay. Sometimes that's what has to happen. But at a certain point, if you want to improve your fibromyalgia symptoms, you are going to need to listen to what your body is saying. So the second one then is unconscious, right? This is really, really sneaky and really, really hard to figure out because it's unconscious. You are not conscious that you're doing it, so it can be really hard to change. So unconscious ways you might not be listening to your body. One is just basic denial. Like you don't even know that you're in denial. You keep acting as if you're still living in the same body that you always had. Newsflash, it is not. Literally, it is not the same body. Your cells have all changed over. You are a different organism. You are not the same person that you maybe were in your 20s, and you're not the same person as you were before fibromyalgia. That doesn't mean we can't get some of that back. We absolutely can, but we also can't be in denial over the fact that life is different now. And we are in a body that has different needs. So again, these are the unconscious ways we get tripped up, but you can spend some time checking back in with your body, checking back in with yourself mentally, tuning into your thoughts maybe a little bit and see maybe where you're in denial, thinking, I should be able to do this, or I used to be able to do this, or why can't I do what I've always done before? If you find yourself thinking those kinds of things, that is denial. And that is an unconscious way that you're not listening to your body. And that is holding you back from getting better. The second type of unconscious way that we're not listening to our bodies is just simply a lack of awareness, right? As I just mentioned, you are in a new body, right? Your cells turn over. You are in a new body and it has new needs and it has new limitations. And as that changes, we're not always aware of what that change is, right? So that lack of awareness. And one of the things that I do with my clients, with my students, with this lack of awareness is I give them a homework assignment that is designed to help you tune back in a little bit. And we call it the Book of You. Literally, you are writing a book about yourself. And in this Book of You, you are making notes of what it is like living in your body. Maybe you jot down that, I'm really not at my best until at least 11 a.m. Or maybe you write down, I cannot drive in traffic. It is terrible for my nervous system. It gives me a headache. It makes my fibro pain worse. I need to avoid traffic. Whatever those things might be for you. And just make a note of them. We've got a podcast episode about writing your body's owner's manual, and I will link to that in today's show notes. That podcast episode is me walking you through the assignment that I give to my students and to my clients. So if you find yourself really not being aware of what your body needs, if I ask you that question, what does your body need? And you are blank, if you have no answer to that question, this is where I would suggest that you start with that podcast episode about writing your body's owner's manual. And I don't have the episode number off the top of my head, but just check today's show notes. We'll have that linked there. Today's show notes you can find at fibromyalgiapodcast.com/163. So that's the second unconscious way. First, we had denial, right? Second is lack of awareness. And the third one that we have to talk about is trauma. A big trauma response can be checking out, disassociation, if we want to take it that far. Most of us aren't totally disassociating. Sometimes we're just sort of a little bit checking out. But trauma response can leave us divorced from our body, checking out from our body, not listening to our bodies. Depending on what kind of trauma we're talking about, you might even actively hate your body, not want to be in your body. And those kinds of traumas really make it hard for us to listen to the things that our bodies are telling us. Depending on the amount and the depth of the trauma, this may not be something that a coach can help you with. You may need to work with a professional on this. You may need a mental health provider, a psychologist, a counselor, a therapist. You may even need some medication help. You may need to see a psychiatrist. There's lots of ways that we can go with trauma depending on the type of trauma. But we do need to acknowledge that sometimes the traumas that we experience can keep us from listening to our body's needs and honoring our body's needs, which is absolutely going to keep us from being able to improve our fibromyalgia, because listening to your body is one of the key things you have to do in order to make everything else work. So that's the number one reason that I see most commonly is people just not listening to their bodies. And this typically shows up looking like still pushing through to get things done. It looks like doing all the things. It looks like keeping the house as clean as you always used to, doing all the things with your kids, doing all the things at work, trying to be superwoman, right? We need to recheck that. We need to take a step back and see, what can I really do in this season of my life? And I just want to be super, super clear here. I am not saying that these are things you're going to have to give up for the rest of your life. We might have to give things up for a time so that you can get them back later. But if you don't take the time to heal now, it'll just get worse. So a great example, if you need a metaphor, an analogy, something to picture in your mind, think about if you broke your leg. You have to stay off that leg for a certain amount of time so that bone can heal properly. If you do that, your leg will heal, you'll be able to go back, you'll be able to live life like normal again. If you don't, if you keep walking around on that leg, if you keep doing all the things, there's a chance that it might actually get worse, that you might have problems with that leg for the rest of your life. That's what I'm talking about here. With fibromyalgia, we're not talking about a few weeks for a bone to heal. We might be talking about even a few years. From the time that I started working with my coach to the time where my fibromyalgia was in remission was several years, right? I was diagnosed back in 2007, so it's been almost 20 years of working on this. Right? And there are things that I am still working on. So don't be afraid to give things up thinking that you'll never get them back. The whole point is to get them back. But also don't be in denial about the fact that you do need to give things up, just like staying off your leg when you're waiting for it to heal. So that's number one, not listening to your body, pushing yourself anyway, keep doing all the things, even though your body is sending you all these signals. Stop, slow down, I need more rest. That doesn't feel good. This isn't working for me. Number two, the number two reason that I see most commonly that people's fibromyalgia symptoms don't improve is because there is another illness or condition that is keeping them from progressing. Now, sometimes, and quite often, most of the time, I would say that this is something that is either undiagnosed or undertreated. So undiagnosed, you know what that means. It just hasn't been diagnosed yet. And there have literally been times that people have come to me. I've done consultations with people and they're telling me, I'm trying all of these things for my fibromyalgia and nothing is working. And I will tell them, I think it's not working because I think you've got something else going on. If you're trying all the fibro things and none of the fibro things are helping what you think is your fibromyalgia, it might not be fibromyalgia, or it might be something else in addition to fibromyalgia. I do see that often too. People will be diagnosed with fibromyalgia. Things will work to a certain point, but then they just kind of get to a plateau and they can't get past it. That's usually because there's something else that needs to be treated. So just talking about my own life, I was doing pretty well. And then like a third of my hair fell out and I was tired all the time. And my doctor did more testing and discovered that I have autoimmune thyroid condition, Hashimoto's. And discovering that, then we were able to treat that and I was able to get over that hump. But if that had never been diagnosed, if I had a doctor who didn't know how to diagnose or treat that or test and see what was going on, I might still be stuck in that place and still be struggling. Another example from my life was discovering when I had upper airway resistance syndrome. It's a condition kind of like sleep apnea. If I had not been diagnosed with that, I would still be struggling to get a good night's sleep, and I would probably still be in pain. So we need to get these other things tracked down. My philosophy when I was working on myself was that, a body is made up of a whole lot of parts, right? And if I can make all the parts work as well as possible, then the whole is going to work better. So don't be afraid to track all those little things down. There is no one that is more of an expert in your body than you. So if there's something that you're feeling and you're not sure about it, ask. Talk to your doctors. And if you have doctors who are dismissive, it is time to find a new doctor. I would rather have a doctor who listens to me, who believes me, who trusts that what I'm saying is my actual experience, than I would have somebody who is an expert at fibromyalgia. I would rather have the human doctor who believes me, understands me, respects me. Of course, the ideal would be to have both, but that's not always an option, right? So if you have a doctor who's dismissive, a doctor who is not taking you seriously when you say, hey, there's something else going on here, it's time to find a new doctor. So those are those unknown, undiagnosed things. But we also find that a lot of people are under-treating other conditions largely because they're blaming those things on fibromyalgia. So I'll give you an example. Headaches. Most people with fibromyalgia have headaches. But headaches, and migraines in particular, are a separate diagnosis, and they are something that is treatable. So if you are being told, or if you're thinking yourself, I have fibromyalgia, so of course I get headaches, and you're not actually pursuing treatment of those headaches or those migraines, that's holding you back. One of my students during our advisor class, she is one of the students who has improved the most in all the time, the 10 years that I've been teaching people. She probably improved about 80%, give or take, during the 3-month class. That is huge. All she really did was focus on getting her headaches more under control. So she found a neurologist. She tried some new treatments. She got those headaches treated, and that improved her fibromyalgia because fibromyalgia is an amplifier. It takes whatever you're experiencing and it cranks up the pain. It turns up the fatigue and the brain fog. So if you're experiencing something like migraines or anything else that is causing pain, fatigue, brain fog, your fibromyalgia is going to make that worse. One of the ways that we can improve our fibromyalgia symptoms is to take out those things that are getting turned up. If there's nothing to amplify, the fibro symptoms won't be as bad. So take the time to really determine, is this actually fibromyalgia or is this coming from somewhere else, and can that be treated? That's another assignment I give all of my students, is to take a look at their pain and see, is this coming from somewhere else? Could this be treated? Am I getting appropriate treatment for that? And again, that may mean adding somebody to your team. Maybe you need to add a neurologist to your team. Maybe it means switching, right? Maybe you need a new neurologist who doesn't blame everything on your fibromyalgia, but you might need to make some changes to your medical care team. The third part of this, the having another illness or condition that's holding you back, is that some things just aren't fixable. We wish that we could fix everything, but we just can't. And a good example of this is something like degenerative disc disease. We can't make that like it never happened. Some injuries we cannot go back and fix. Some of the more progressive arthritis conditions, right? Like even osteoarthritis or rheumatoid arthritis. Other conditions like lupus. There are all kinds of things that are a little bit more progressive. And once the damage is done, it's done. And we can't completely repair that. And if, unfortunately, you find yourself in that position, then just be aware of the fact that we're only going to be able to improve so far because you still have those other things going on. So that's the second reason, that there is some other illness or condition that is limiting how much better you can get. And there's a lot of things here that you can do in terms of discovering if there's something else that you need to address, or even changing your medical care team. But there's also a component to this that you can't change. So be aware. All right. Number 3, not being ready, willing, and or able to do the work. And what I mean by the work is whatever it is that you need to do with your fibromyalgia. So that could be things like doing less, right? That could be things like resting more. That could be changing your mindset. That could be changing your diet. It could be all kinds of things. The work. I always joke that it was a lot of hard work getting my fibromyalgia in remission. And most of the time, that work looked like rest. And, as we already discussed in number 1, sometimes your season of life means that you can't rest the way that you need to. Maybe you're single and you can't stop working. Maybe, like I said, you've got 3 kids under the age of 5 and you are the person who has to take care of them. There may be reasons why you can't do the work right now. And it's only going to make it harder for you and make your symptoms worse if you keep trying when now's not the time. It is 100% okay for you to say, you know what, this is not the time for me to work on this, and accept that and then live within that as best you can. Sometimes that's what we have to do. I was fortunate. I was married. My husband's job paid all the bills. I could stop working when I was so sick, when I filed for disability. But not everybody can do that. And so if you're not ready, if you're not willing for whatever reason, you may have really good reasons, or if you aren't able to do the work right now to improve your fibromyalgia, the best thing you can do is just to accept that that's where you are and be ready when things change. So some of the other reasons that people might not be ready, willing, or able to do the work, one of them, again, is trauma, right? Sometimes with clients, we have to work on their trauma before we can work on their fibromyalgia. I have had many clients that didn't really improve their fibromyalgia symptoms, like their pain and their fatigue, didn't improve all that much while we worked together. But what happened in their heads and in their hearts changed a lot. And sometimes that's where we have to start, right? So trauma can be a big, big piece of this. As again, the season of life, right? If you're taking care of aging parents, if you're taking care of small children, if you are the provider for your family, it might be a season of life where you just aren't ready, aren't willing, and are not able to do what you need to do to improve your fibromyalgia. And again, that is 100% okay, no judgment. The last thing that I want to mention under this category is that sometimes we're mentally and emotionally ready and willing and able, but the resources aren't there. That could be financial resources. Maybe you don't have the resources to pay for things. It could also be a lack of resources because of where you live. I grew up in a tiny little town of 2,000 people. I literally would go an hour and a half, 2 hours, one direction to the dentist. So I understand about a lack of resources where you live. And financial resources, this is a biggie too, because most of the things that are going to help you improve your fibromyalgia are not covered under insurance. There are things that you have to pay for out of pocket, or only a certain amount is maybe covered, like acupuncture. I get a certain number, I think it's 12 acupuncture visits for the year. When I was going to acupuncture every week or every other week, that would not last through the year. So there may be things that you have to pay for out of pocket, and you don't have the financial resources to do that. This is a problem. And I personally do not have a good solution for that. Most of what I talk about on this podcast, I give you a lot of things that you can do for yourself. But at the end of the day, sometimes you still need other help that has to be paid for out of pocket, and that may be keeping you from improving your fibromyalgia symptoms. Now, there are some great organizations that are working on this, like the Fibromyalgia National Health Organization. They are actively meeting with lawmakers, working to get funding for research, working to get more things covered under insurance. All of this kind of goes together, and they're actively working on that. So if this is an area of passion for you, I would recommend connecting with them because they're doing really great work with that. The other organization that I'll mention to you is the Sherry Little Foundation. The Sherry Little Foundation was started by me. One of my clients actually passed away from chronic pain, and there's a lot of questions surrounding her death. We won't go into that right now. We have a future episode coming on the Sherry Little Foundation where you'll learn more about Sherry and the foundation. But the foundation offers micro grants of $1,000 or less to chronic pain patients specifically who have limited support and limited financial resources. In fact, you have to be making under a certain amount in order to qualify for the grants. So if you find yourself in this situation, stay tuned. In the next month, actually, before this episode even comes out, we're going to be making a very special announcement with the Sherry Little Foundation that we're going to be giving away extra grants for Chronic Pain Awareness Month this year. So be watching for that. And like I said, there'll be an episode coming up here soon where we'll talk about that a whole lot more. The other thing that the Sherry Little Foundation does is it sponsors coaching scholarships. So all of my coaches, when I work with them, one of the things I teach them is make sure you're giving back to your community. And this looks like a lot of different things. Some of my coaches will offer free classes. I personally give away my books. This podcast is for free. But we also will offer coaching scholarships. These are at a pay what you can price. So the consultations themselves, there's no charge for these. And depending on if you qualify, you can also get up to 3 coaching sessions at a price that you can afford. That may be $1. So you will actually work with your coach to figure out that amount. But if you find yourself in this situation, I recommend that you check out the Sherry Little Foundation and our coaching scholarships and sign up so that you can be notified when our next grant application window opens. And again, you'll find all of this in today's show notes, fibromyalgiapodcast.com/163. So let me just recap that. The question was, if you had to name the top 3 reasons why people don't improve, what would those be? And those top 3 reasons are people are not listening to their bodies for various reasons. They, number 2, have another illness or condition that is keeping them from improving. This could be diagnosed or undiagnosed or undertreated. And number 3, not being ready, willing, and or able to do the work for various reasons. Trauma, season of life, lack of resources. There's lots of reasons that this might not be the right time for you. So keep those in mind. Do a little bit of self-exploration. And if I could give you a little bit of homework, it would be to spend some time journaling, thinking through these 3 things and seeing where they might apply to you. I would recommend checking out the episode that we'll link to in today's show notes, where you can start writing your body's owner's manual, writing that book of you, where you are learning about your body, what helps you feel better, what makes you feel worse, what you need to do more of, what you need to do less of. And again, we'll post that in today's show notes. It's fibromyalgiapodcast.com/163. I'm going to leave it at that for this week. Although, let me just real quick here open up my list of sweet notes I get from people. This one is actually a post from Wendy on Facebook. She said, I always say I feel like I was sleeping through life for a few years. Turns out there's a name for that, survival mode. If you are living life this way, you can do things to help improve your situation. You might not ever be 100% pain-free or have a ton of energy every day, but you can improve to live a better life. Then Wendy says, a good start is to find Tami Stackelhouse on Facebook and start listening to her podcast. It's free and has a ton of great information about fibromyalgia. Thank you so much. You're shouting out to me. I'm shouting out to you. So listeners shout out, but also thank you for the shout out, Wendy. That was really, really wonderful what you said there. And yes, there are tons of free resources. The podcast itself is free, but also if you go to fibromyalgiapodcast.com, there are lots of free resources. Just look in the main menu for resources. You can grab my books for free, our free fibromyalgia wellness style quiz, all kinds of goodies out there. So I will leave you with that, and we will see you back here next time. And that wraps up another episode of the Fibromyalgia Podcast. I'm your coach, Tami Stacklehouse. For daily doses of hope, inspiration, and practical advice, come hang out with me on Facebook. Visit facebook.com/fibrocoach to find my personal coaching page and connect with me directly. To find the show notes, additional resources, or to schedule a consultation with me or one of my coaches, visit fibromyalgiapodcast.com.